that line. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. So let me ask you, how well are you listening to where love is leading your life? Or maybe I should ask, are you listening to where love is leading your life? My topic today is the love that will not fail. As the 90s pop song said repeatedly, what is love? Right, David, you remember that song?
You know what I do? Anybody remember that song?
There it is.
What is love?
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. Come on. Don't hurt me.
All right.
No more. Come on. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more.
All right, some of you lived through the 90s. All right, I see you. I see the 90s children out there. So, speaking of children, a group of 4 to 8-year-old children were asked this question, what does love mean? And their answers were broader, deeper, and more profound than anyone had imagined. Rebecca, who was 8 years old, said, when my grandmother got arthritis, she couldn't bend over and paint her toenails anymore. So my grandfather does it for her all the time, even after his hands got arthritis too. That's love. And I love this one. When someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know that your name is safe in their mouth. Billy, age 4. Love is when a girl puts on perfume and a boy puts on shaving cologne and they go out and smell each other. That's Carl, age 5's idea of what love is. Or Chrissy, who is age 6, love is when you go out to eat and give somebody most of your French fries without making them give you any of theirs. It's not a bad description, actually. Danny, age 8, says, love is when my mommy makes coffee for my daddy and she takes a sip before giving it to him to make sure the taste is okay. Love is what's in the room with you at Christmas if you stop opening presents and just listen. That's Bobby, age 7. And then Nika, age 6, said, if you want to learn to love better, you should start with a friend who you hate. We need a few million more Nikas on this planet. Love is a little old woman and a little old man who are still friends even after they know each other so well. That's Tommy, age 6, and I think I see some people who resemble that remark. Cindy, age 8, said, during my piano recital, I was on stage and I was scared, and I looked at all the people watching me, and I saw my dad waving and smiling. He was the only one doing that. I wasn't scared anymore. And the final one was a 4-year-old child whose next-door neighbor was an elderly gentleman who had recently lost his wife. Upon seeing the man cry, the little boy went into the old gentleman's yard, climbed onto his lap, and just sat there. When his mother asked what he said to the neighbor, the little boy said, nothing, I just helped him cry. I figured love is a little bit like what the Supreme Court said years ago about pornography. It's hard to define it, but I know it when I see it. Right? Love can be hard to define, but we know it when we experience it. I feel it right now. I always feel it here at All Souls, and especially on Sunday mornings. Now, speaking of All Souls, one of the characteristics that differentiates this congregation and the larger association of Unitarians and Universalists that we're a part of from many other religions and communities is that we find that the unfolding of truth is ongoing, and it's a continuous process, that it wasn't given once and for all in any one language to any one people and then documented in one single scripture. We understand that truth comes from many different sources and many different languages, many different cultures, many different ways of understanding life and beauty and goodness and kindness and love. It's not the exclusive property of any one people or prophetic tradition. We have found that we can find something of truth and value in all of the world's great religions and all of the world's cultures. Of course, science continues to teach us more and more reliable truths about our world. And you may know that the American Unitarians and Universalists were two different traditions for over 150 years in this country, and that they came together in 1961. And the Universalist side of this family began as Christians who stopped believing in hell. They could not believe in a God that would create people and then torture most of them eternally. It seemed like a very sadistic and unforgiving God. And like the children's story that we heard this morning from Shannon, how could our own parents forgive us and love us despite whatever we do and our failures and our sins and whatever you want to call it? And yet this supposed supreme being was apparently less loving, less compassionate, and less forgiving than we humans have the capacity to be. It didn't make any sense. And in fact, they thought it was an insult to God. Sure, fear and eternal punishment could perhaps cause some people to change their behaviors. But the Universalists felt that scaring people about God and death was not necessary or even very effective at creating an ordered and just society. My colleague, Nancy McDonald Ladd, wrote recently in a book, a lovely little book called Love at the Center, that universalism was sometimes called the gospel of God's success. It was the idea that God was not going to fail in the human project. Or Gordon McKeeman characterized it this way: the image was that the last unrepentant sinner would be dragged kicking and screaming into heaven, unable at last to resist the power and love of the Almighty. Now, for them, it was abundant and universal love that characterized God, not fear or punishment or exclusion. Most people at All Souls today do not think in terms of a God that needs to redeem us from some original sin. And even though we all may have our own different ideas about what happens after we die, even those among us who have a concept of God are pretty clear that God has a larger job description than serving as the bouncer who checks tickets at heaven's door. And while All Souls has been a place for 104 years in this community, where many people have found ways to reimagine ideas about God or spirit in ways that make sense to them in a modern world, in light of all that we know from science and life and our own experience, an increasing number of people have come to feel that the whole notion of God and religious language no longer seems helpful or worth reimagining. And that's one reason we started The Point, a service for humanists, where humanists could feel affirmed and welcome and understand that it's perfectly fine. You can be good without God. So still across all the different ideas and beliefs that exist within the life of this All Souls community, one thing that unites us is this idea that love is the answer. A goal of life is to learn to love and to receive love. Throughout life, people are tempted by lots of little gods of power, of success, of status, wealth, but all of them ring empty without love. Love is something that even after someone is gone, it still remains. I'm reminded of a true story that I read in a local newspaper some years ago before I came to Tulsa. It's a true story about a small town in New England. In this town, there was a darling little girl about 13 years old who was a chicken farmer. There was also a huge rock along the side of the main road as you entered the town. And one morning when the people woke up and they were driving to school or driving to work, they noticed that someone had painted something on the side of the rock. It said, "Chicken farmer, I love you." Well, before long, everyone in this small town was talking about it. There was even a picture of it in the local newspaper the next day. But nobody admitted to painting it. There was a young boy who lived at the house across the way from the chicken farmer, and some people suspected it was him. But he never admitted it, and he never asked the girl out on a date. The rock became famous in this little town. As a matter of fact, people even used to give directions. They'd say to people, now you go down the road until you see this big rock that says, "Chicken farmer, I love you," and then you take a left and keep going, whatever the directions happen to be. And this went on for years and years, and the paint never seemed to fade. It was almost as if somebody was coming along and every once in a while touching up the letters. Eventually, the chicken farmer, she graduated from high school. She went on to go to college, and she ended up getting married and moving across the country. And then, out of the blue, one morning, as people were driving to work, they saw that someone had used black paint and had covered over the words, "Chicken farmer, I love you." News of this spread fast, and the people in the town were not happy. As it turns out, there was a new police chief in town, and he thought that the words "Chicken farmer, I love you," painted on the side of a rock, were unsightly, and so he had them painted over. Well, a few days went by, and people were still upset and disappointed, but they began to resign themselves to the change. Until one morning, they woke up and saw that someone had painted in the same color, with letters the same size, the words, "Chicken farmer, I still love you." Now, this sweet story is a reminder that even long after people are gone, love remains. A person can move away, can die, years can pass, new events and people can come and paint over the love and the memories, but the love we have for someone lasts forever. That's why it's wise to be indiscriminate with our love, to love widely, and to always choose love. Now, as you can imagine, people come to see me about all kinds of difficulties and decisions that they're facing. One of the main questions that I typically ask someone when they come to see me is, well, what is the most loving thing you could do? It's sometimes a harder question to answer than it would seem. One man who gave me permission to share this story came to see me some years ago, and he had the power of attorney for healthcare decisions for his mother. Now, at this point, she was being kept alive by life support and was no longer conscious. She told him years earlier that she did not want to be kept alive in such a situation. But his siblings were not okay with stopping the medical assistance. He was in crisis, feeling that he had to honor his mother's wishes, of course, but also knowing that it would probably end his relationship with his brother and sister, who said to them it would be unforgivable. In the end, he decided that the most loving thing to do was to wait and to stay in conversation with his siblings until they all could agree on what to do. When looking through the lens of love in his situation, he realized that the last thing that his mom would want is for her children to all become estranged due to her death. When she said that she didn't want to be kept alive on life support, she was saying that in part because she did not want to be a burden to her family. And the idea that she would now, her death would now lead to them all being mad at each other, not liking each other, maybe even not talking to each other. To him, it just seemed like that's not what his mother would have wanted. So he decided, since she was not in pain, and since she certainly had sacrificed a lot over many years for her children, he went back to his brother and sister and he said that he would honor their wishes and wait until they all agreed before making a decision. Now, in their case, it wasn't very long before the others came around to ending the medical assistance. And he was really glad that he made that choice instead of forcing himself. But it came from asking that question, what would love have me do? Of course, it doesn't always work out that well. Sometimes family members end up hurting and even hating one another. Sometimes we find that we did not make the loving choice in our lives, and we can feel really bad about it. Even then, the question still remains the same. Now, what would love have you do? Would love tell you to keep beating yourself up? Would love tell you to look for a way to forgive yourself, to forgive someone else? What would love have you do? I have sat with people holding some very deep regrets. Sometimes all I can do is what that 4-year-old boy did whose elderly next-door neighbor had just lost his wife. I don't literally climb onto anyone's lap, but I do just sit there and help them cry. I must admit, I have yet to have someone who regrets acting from a place of love. Even when they don't like what the other person may have done in response, they feel much better that they came from a place that they could feel proud of in themselves. So I'll end this message where I began, with the same question. Are you listening to where love is leading your life? Actually, I take that back. I'm going to be a little more direct. I want you to listen this week, forever, to where love is leading your life. Because that kind of love, it never fails. And so, I just want to say this morning, after all that we've been through together in the 25 years since I've been here in Tulsa, all the struggles, the conflicts, the losses, the celebrations, I still love you.